5, here we go. Rudy and the crew, exclusive interview. Welcome to the show, let's have some fun. Sweep Unplugged starts now.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Sweep Unplugged. Rudy Composition coming to you from Sweep the League Network, Sweep the League TV. Hit that subscribe button on our YouTube page. All you gotta do is go to YouTube, search Sweep the League TV, hit subscribe. That way you can get all the great content that we provide from the big show, Sweep the League TV, with myself and Derek Gervin, all the way down to Sweep Unplugged, STL 316, the new wrestling podcast that was just launched, STL Music blowing up worldwide. Plus, we got the Best Boys podcast. We got Great in the Market. We just got a whole bunch of stuff on the network that you do not want to miss. Always the biggest thing is Sweep Unplugged. And who do we have today? Well, again, 2025 just started. We are, 23 days, 24 days, maybe a little bit more into the new year. We brought you fitness. We brought you finances. We brought you health as far as the mind, controlling the stress, controlling pressure. Now it's time to let out the frustration as we talk. As you see the title, combat sports, MMA, UFC, everything that we can talk about. We've got a great guest today. Timmy B of Fight Insight podcast is going to kind of chop it up with us today. It's kind of cool because I originally was a fan of MMA from way back then, and I'm gonna age myself here in a little bit with Timmy. And then I kind of took a break, came back a little bit, and I've been on a hiatus forever. So I got to get the update and the lowdown, as the kids call it, the 411 on the new UFC, MMA. There's just a ton going on. You got to pay a main event going on this weekend, a fight card going on this weekend in PFL that I just saw. We're going to talk everything with Timmy B. So let's not waste any time here. Let's welcome him to the stage, to the Sweep the League studios here. And that's Mr. Timmy B of Fight Insight podcast. How you doing, Timmy?
What's up, brother? How are you? And great to meet you. Great to see you here. That music intro that you had at the beginning, dude. I need someone to cut some music for me like that. I need that. That will up my production value.
Well, we've got a hell of a team. We've got a hell of a team of producers that do wonders. And I'll be honest, without them, I would look like garbage in my studio and stuff would look like garbage. So yeah, I'm just lucky to have them, man. But more than so, I'm lucky to have you here on Sweep Unplugged. Thank you for joining us today. And straight into Fight Insight. You've been the host. It's been 4 years, going on 4 years. You're bringing interviews on from many guys in the world of combat sports. Talk to us a little bit about Fight Insight podcast.
Yeah, man. Fight Insight podcast is the best damn MMA podcast that you're not already listening to. I'll tell you that. 4 years I've been doing it. I actually hit my fourth year anniversary. Episode 208 will be next week. I started this during the pandemic when everything shut down. I was training martial arts all the time, helping people train and compete. And then when the pandemic hit, couldn't do anything. So I had a comic book podcast that kind of like I would help out on. I see you got comics in the background, and I've got some comics in my background as well. I was doing that, and I was like kind of guesting on this local comic book show. And I was like, you know what? I want to do my own thing. I want to be in control of it. And then my real passion was MMA. So I started that up just to be able to keep in touch with the fighters at my gym, really.
Yeah.
Next thing you know, I've got UFC fighters saying that they want to come on the podcast and that they would love to come on. And I'm like, I'm like a nobody, right? Like, this is nothing. And they're like, no, I'm going to come on because they want to do things like what I've come to realize in 4 years is that fighters are real people. They're just like people like you and I. They just want to have fun. They just want to be able to, pursue their dreams and talk nonsense and whatever. The last guest I had was pretty much mostly talking about my Street Fighter machine in the background that I've got. And he challenged me to Street Fighter, and I'm going to take him up on that. Wow. So then I started doing it. Fighters start coming on. Next thing I know, I'm now 207 weeks in a row. Never missed a week. Guests from around the world of combat sports, from amateurs to pros, from champions. If you know UFC's Dricus du Plessis, right before he became champion, we had him on. Bobby King Green, champions from Bellator, Corey Anderson, Liz Carmouche, ONE FC champions, ONE FC fighters, Denise Zamboanga. Like, we have it all, man. And what I will say is that my podcast tells real stories. You want to know crap about how the PFL tried to push Kelsey DeSantis to lose against Clarissa Shields, to do everything they could to let Clarissa Shields win that fight, you come over here. You want to know about fake medical tests, fake drug tests, where they kind of like shut down fighters from competing, you come to me. We tell the real stories. We tell stories that people don't get out. And I've been really honored and blessed to be able to do this for so long. I'm having a blast. I've wanted to quit for the last 3 years, but I just can't because I keep getting cool guests. And I'm like, okay, well, I guess I'll keep going, and now I'm very happy to announce that this year in 2025, my new permanent co-host is UFC veteran Brian Bam Bam Barberina. So super stoked about that, man. He was a huge friend of the podcast, and when my last co-host was no longer able to continue, he stepped up, and so now I've got a real UFC fighter as my co-host. So that, how cool is that?
Your journey in the world of podcasting and streaming, it reminds me of myself. I started this thing back in 2009. So I mean, it's been a while since we've actually been doing this, and it really started streaming up and ramping up around 2016 is when I started to get really serious about it. And I've had those times where I wanted to quit. I'm like, oh, it's not good. Then I made it to radio. We were able to get, local San Antonio Spurs players. We were able to get just a bunch of people I expected to never talk to. Kind of like we were like, well, how did I get this person? How did I get this person? And then now you mentioned, well, your new co-host is a former fighter. My co-host and actually one of my hosts is a former NBA player, and Derek Irvin. So it's kind of crazy how when you're looking in the mirror, you're like, wait a minute, Timmy's exactly like me. This is like the same story that I've been through.
Twinsies.
So, exactly. And that's the thing. That's a good thing to transition to, because you have a lot of people that want to quit. And I've been there. You've been there. Advice to those people out there that you can give that have those moments where like, my podcast isn't going anywhere. I don't get the views. I don't get this. You know what? I've tried reaching out to so many people and they just can't do it. My advice is don't quit. But what advice could you give to guys out there for that?
Well, my advice is life advice, man. You should only be doing stuff to make yourself happy and of course your wife, but do stuff to make yourself happy, man. If you're doing this because you want to become popular, or you're doing this because you want to get views, then you're not in it. Like that's not what it's all about, man. It's about having fun every time that you're on that mic, and it's just about growing yourself as a person. It has nothing to do. Sometimes, like, there's some stupid podcast I did that got 30,000 views. I'm like, why did this get 30,000 views and the other one got 400? Like, it's just so random. The world, I made a quote the other day that I really feel is real. The problem with social media is not misinformation. It's its ability to make you miss information.
I saw that.
Okay. Everything that social media does, it just funnels you to these certain sources, right? So when you're starting up a podcast, man, it may not hit. It may not get traction, but as long as you're having fun, then do it. What else are you going to be doing with your time? You know what I mean? Like, if you're having fun, and I'll tell you, doing podcasting grows you as a person. It makes you a much better conversationalist. It makes you a much better listener. It makes you a much better thinker as a whole, because as you prepare for your podcast, you're doing research, you're studying, you're opening your eyes to the world. It just makes you a better person, man. So if you're doing it, just have fun. Just make sure that you're enjoying it. That's the whole point of it.
100%. I appreciate that. You spreading the word out for everybody out there that is into podcasting. That I don't sugarcoat stuff kind of the way you do on your show. We don't sugarcoat it here. It's tough. It's hard. It's a lot of hard work. You've got to get stuff done. The good thing to do is surround yourself with people as well that are going to be able to support you. He is Timmy B, Fight Inside Podcast. You can check out the socials that are going to be scrolling down. Plus, it's in the background with the other great stuff he's got looking up on those shelves that is there.
Yeah.
He's into comic books and streaming all that. Well, I'm going to say right now that knowing that we do comic cons here, we cover that. So maybe I can hit you up and be like, hey, can you jump on a podcast, talk some
dude, of course,
nerd stuff with us when we're at comic cons? Because we love that kind of stuff here. But
yeah, man.
One thing for sure we want to get into, man, is of course combat sports itself. Now I'm going to age myself because when I first was introduced, it was back in UFC, the Ultimate Fighting Championship, and you had one night to prove yourself, and that was the likes of Ken Shamrock and Royce Gracie, Dan Severn. You had a whole bunch of guys back in the day, and I loved it. Royce Gracie was my favorite growing up. And then you started to see, you know what? It's a little brutal to see one guy go through 3 or 4 fights in one night to become the Ultimate Fighting Champion. It's grown up to what we've seen now. what has the transition been from those days to current UFC, current combat sports? Because back then it was so kind of limited, it was so no holds barred, to now it has ballooned and exploded into just this, social phenomena.
Yeah, I think sorry about that. That's my unprofessionalism there at work.
Oh.
Yeah, I will say I think what's weird is we started out in that time when you had to go to my friend's aunt's house. She had an illegal black box where you would watch the Ultimate Fighting Championship where Hoist Gracie is fighting and Chemo comes out with his,
Yeah.
crazy tattoos and whatever. This was back in the old days, dude. I'm an old guy. And and man, you had to like, you were watching, it was super illegal, right? Like it
Yeah.
was like something that like it was you do not talk about it. Then it got into a little bit of a more modern era, but it was struggling to find a ground, right? That's when you had like Tito Ortiz really hitting his stride, Tank Abbott, right? In
Yeah.
those days, the story that if people don't know, the company starts to go broke, they start to go bad, they start to go almost bankrupt, and they're almost done. Then they hit it, they get an investment, they start to get the deals, and now we've come into the era that we all know, the George St. Pierre eras, the Matt Hughes eras, the
Yeah.
Iceman Chuck Liddell, right? Then Spike TV does the reality TV show, and then it starts to really pick up, and everything blossoms and blooms, right? And now we're in essentially the golden age, right? Of UFC now. We've got all these world champions, people that are worldwide known, dude, like incredible. Like wherever you go, these fighters are around, and the general public knows who these people are. Right now, it's become a sport. It's progressed to the point now where it is like really a sport. And what's incredible is the fighters that are competing in it now have been training since they were 6 years old.
Yeah.
The sport has now gained such popularity that people are training for this at the same time I was training in tennis. You know what I mean? Like, so imagine when you were a parent, 20, 40 years ago, you're raising your kid, you're like, oh, what are we going to put little Bobby in? Okay, let's put him in tennis. Let's put him in soccer. Now there's parents that are sitting there who have watched UFC their whole life. Their kid's growing 6 years old and they're going, what should I put him in? I should put him in some jujitsu to choke the hell out of kids. Like that's a pretty good life skill. And and so that's where we're at now, man. We're at the age where this is a real thing, that this is a general sport for people. It has so many benefits that everybody knows. And again, shameless plug, but watching a podcast like mine, you get to meet these people and you go, these aren't just, psycho killers. These are
Yeah.
just true, respectful men and women who are doing a sport and trying to earn a living and trying to become the best in the world at whatever that is.
Yeah, you know what? And it's not shameful at all. You plug your podcast as much as you want. This show is about you. It's about everybody that's a guest on here. So you plug whatever you want. We are talking to Timmy B, Fight Inside podcast, going over the evolution of UFC from the illegal black boxes that you had to go, or in my case, going and having a cousin rent the old VHS tape back at
Ah.
Blockbuster because
Dude,
I
you know
couldn't
what?
find out my
I'm
mom
gonna
doing that.
I'm gonna break in for 1 sec. I was just at a
Yeah.
Dollarama store
Uh-huh.
and they had the original Pride DVDs for like $2. I was like, "What
Wow,
is?" I
man.
just passed by it. Like, man, that is crazy that now you
I
can get it at the Dollarama.
man, it's kind of crazy. I know I'm going to get a lot of comments about VHS. What is a VHS? I'm like, oh God,
Mm,
I can't explain to you kids what a VHS is. That is for
yeah.
damn sure. But you're going from the evolution to what we've got now. Now, the question I've got, because before I get into fighters and just a couple of the fighters that I used to watch, and quick shout out George St. Pierre. I was watching him when he was struggling,
Yeah.
losing matches, and all of a sudden he goes from George St. Pierre to GSP. But when you're looking at the product now, my huge thing is the reason why I haven't got back into it as much as I used to was because I don't know if it's not a disrespectful term. It's a good thing, but has it become saturated? Has it become just too much? Because boxing for a while there, I was a huge boxing guy, and then it just became too much in boxing. And I feel like combat sports, MMA, UFC in general, it's just getting too big and too everywhere you look, there's just fight, 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 fight. And you don't know exactly where to look and who to follow, stuff like
Mm.
that. So is it bigger than what it needs to be? I guess is what I'm asking.
That's an interesting take, man. One of the things that's happened during the pandemic is the UFC, because they couldn't run events, in giant stadiums and all that for fear of whatever. they have their UFC Apex, which is in Vegas. It's a it's a small venue that it's kind of limited to. I think it's like 300 fans. And when I say
Mhm.
fans, it's like over $1,000 a ticket, and it generally just sells to like the fighters, family, and friends because it's
Yeah.
so small. They keep running that now, and they've still continued to use that venue, probably because it's very financially viable for them to just put it in a like a standard housed area.
Mhm.
Um, that sucks, man. Nobody likes that venue. Nobody appreciates that, especially now post pandemic, right? When you could be at a friggin' local high school for all things, right? To get like a better crowd, more exciting. I
Yeah.
think maybe what you're noticing is that the crowd sometimes, because like when you're in the Apex, it's a smaller crowd. And so you don't get that big, exciting feel. That's
Mhm.
one of the problems I know that real fans have with the UFC. Also, there are quite a few organizations trying to make a go at being the next thing. So you've got ONE FC that's on Amazon Prime. Anytime I'm watching that organization, and I love them because I want people to have a place to fight, and you know, I've interviewed so many people from there. If I'm watching that on TV, my wife tells me to turn it off. She hates it. She feels that that production value is really bad. She can notice it immediately and go like, "Yeah, that's terrible. Get that off the TV." Then you've got the PFL, which just bought Bellator.
Mhm.
Uh, the PFL product is not very good. You know, a lot of people don't really like that. And then tonight, does this air live? Like, are people going to see this today?
Oh,
Like,
yeah, it'll be
you
today.
mentioned the date. So
Yeah, it'll be today.
tonight at 8 p.m., there's an organization called the Global Fight League. It's
Okay.
kicking off, and they're doing a live draft. They've apparently signed 450 fighters, and they're going to draft 120 of them tonight.
Wow.
Is this thing going to be a total bomb, Rudy? I mean, it's a 50-50 coin flip, and I think the coin might be rigged that they're both failures. You know, like, it is really weird. I'm gonna be live streaming a watch party with it with another professional fighter, and we're gonna be you know, doing a watch party to watch this draft on Millions.
Yeah.
Dude, I have no idea what to expect.
It's
The problem is I hear what you're saying. Like, it needs to have like a massive feel,
Mhm.
like back in the days of Tyson, where like every Tyson fight was crazy.
Yeah.
But the thing is like, not every week can be the Super Bowl or the Stanley Cup. Some weeks it's just a regular season game. You know what I mean? So it's like watching your favorite local sports team. If you watch every game every week, multiple times a week, do
Yeah.
you get a little bit bored of it? Probably the non-hardcore fan, yeah, they'll be like, okay, well, this is just again another one, right?
Yeah.
And especially if the card doesn't have like one of your favorite fighters or someone that's really bringing a lot of draw, it can be a little bit light, but that's what separates the hardcore from the casuals, Rudy.
I'm hearing
And
you
that's
completely
okay.
on
That's
that.
okay.
Yeah, and I that is okay, and that kind of draws me to where the part I was going to go with on this is that we talking about, okay, not everybody can be the main card. Not everybody can
Right.
be UFC and massive pay-per-views and all this great stuff. So at what point does PFL, do these other leagues who are, like we mentioned, not so great yet, they could be in the future, they could be big, but at what point do you start going into the, look at the wrestling world? You've got WWE, then you've got the indies, you got MLB, you've got the major leagues and you got the minor leagues. At what
Yep.
point does everybody come together and say, look, this is going to be our development side, and then these are the companies you want to try to reach
Yep.
eventually? Because if you're trying to sell me, and I'm not picking on PFL, but if you're trying to sell me PFL and you're putting all these guys on here, for someone like me, I'm like, I don't really know a lot of these people, so why am I going to watch something like this? And I guess where it also goes is the development part. Could these be development situations where you've got, older fighters retiring, these young fighters coming up, and they're going to get more of a spotlight?
Yeah. I think the thing is like, the organizations like ONE FC, like PFL, they keep wanting to become number one.
Yeah.
You know, if you talk to the owner of ONE FC over in Asia, Shatri Sichidong, he says he's number one. He goes, "Look at my numbers. I'm number one." We're like, dude, we all know you're not number one. Uh, it's hard, man. Like, everybody, like your podcast, my podcast, someone's business, their bakery, their, whatever. Everybody wants to be the best.
Mhm.
So you're trying to do that. If you're not the best, I guess the problem is, how are people going to watch me? Like you're saying, right? Like, why would I
Yeah.
watch? I think the biggest thing that fighters need to do, and so I've been very, very blessed and honored. I'm now a part of the Fight League Atlantic team, and that's an
Yeah.
organization out on East Coast Canada. That's one of the biggest, if not the biggest, Canadian promotion. Okay, and I'm a commentator for them now, and I've been doing that since September of 2023. So honored and happy to be there, dude. The first time I went out there, they are in massive arenas. The Moncton Coliseum is where we're going to be on February 1st. Go check them out, fightleagueatlantic.com.
Definitely.
The Moncton Coliseum. When I was a kid, that's where Hulk Hogan used to wrestle when he came to Canada, right? So I'm like, holy cow, this is a big arena. You go there, the production value is top notch. And the
Mhm.
fights from amateur kids to pros, these guys are amazing. I think what needs to happen is that the more that the UFC becomes popular, people need to look at things that are in their local areas and go out and support. These kids are like bouncers at a club, and then fighting every few months, like, for your pleasure, and
Yeah.
the quality is insane. I think what needs to happen is that people who are fans of mixed martial arts as a whole need to start supporting the grassroots organizations. Start supporting grassroots fighters, buy their t-shirts, buy their whatever, right? Like, help these kids.
Yeah.
And if you do that, as they go to the other organizations, you'll follow them. And then you'll start to watch those other organizations, and then maybe you'll fall in love. Maybe you won't, but at least I'm still going to follow that kid that I've been watching, or that little girl that I've been watching now grow up and fight. And I think that's how you do it. I think fans need to start looking at what's local. Can I go to an event near me? Can I go and support
Mhm.
someone close to me? There's organizations all over the place, man.
Oh
And
yeah.
even if you're in Canada like I am, the 51st state, you can fly to East Coast Canada,
Yeah.
man, for like 200 Canadian dollars. That's like $5 American. You can fly to the event, get a hotel, watch that event. Dude, it is amazing. Sometimes I'm walking around the arena before the show starts,
Mhm.
and I'll see some people, like older people, and I'm thinking like, oh, there's someone's grandma or parent. So I'll walk over and I'll say, hey, how's it going? Who are you here to watch? And amazingly, they will go, oh, I don't know anyone. I just came for the good time. And it is so cool to see that. Like, people that are just out there to support the sport, they're not there because it's their nephew or their son or their grandkid. They're there because they just want to watch a good sport. The more we get people like that, the better this sport is going to be, and the better those organizations will kind of develop and maybe gather some fans as well. Every organization has something to offer that's a little bit different. So you just got to find it.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting because you mentioned the draft part, and I started thinking a little bit more right now. Like, I I don't see how that'll work at all. I'm not going to be negative about it. You got to try it. You got to try something.
Yeah.
So I don't see how that'll work, but best wishes for them on that.
You know what? It's the other thing I'll say is, it's the fighters need to continually pump out their social media.
Yeah,
I'm so
that's huge.
sorry, and I hate it too. And I wish I had someone to just do my social media. But if you're a fighter, the way that you are going to get popular, the way that you are going to get people to follow you, to get people in the seats and coming to your events and buying tickets with your name on it, is by going on social media. Go on podcasts, come over to this podcast, come to my podcast. Put
Absolutely.
yourself out there, keep getting media clips, keep getting things that you can post out, repurpose clips, do all that, right? That's the only way.
Yeah.
Like, you got to do that. And there are fighters who are very good at it, and there are fighters that are not very good at it. And I get it. Not everybody's personality is the greatest,
Yeah.
or like is like shocking. But you do what you do. There's one guy that's fighting on the Fight League Atlantic card. They just posted a promo for him, and he goes, "My name is Rory Gillis, and I'll be fighting February 1st at FLA 18." And then he goes, "I don't talk crap. That's my promo." And I know the dude, and I'm like, yeah, that's totally him. But that was freaking hilarious. And it's funny, and it's good, and it's like, yeah, so you don't have to become someone that you're not. Just
Yeah.
be who you are, but just put stuff out. That's all.
Yeah. You
Yeah.
have to. It's self-promotion, especially these days. I mean, social media, as bad as it can be a huge blessing if you're trying to
Right.
promote yourself. It takes a simple
Yeah.
TikTok video and bam, everybody gets to know you. So
Yeah.
definitely talking to Timmy B of Fight Insight podcast. Mentioned that he's a commentator, and it's time to have a little bit of fun towards the end of the show here, Timmy. So have you as commentator had and everyone's seen the meme and everything like that, the Joe Rogan, and pushback moment. As a commentator, have you had that special moment yet where you jump out of the seat, you're high-fiving everybody and screaming, and it's like, holy cow, what did I just see?
So I've had it twice.
Okay.
Well, no. First thing I'll say is one time last year, I had the opportunity, the regular co-commentator with myself, who's a UFC veteran, Chris, the Greek assassin Kalidas. He's an East Coast guy, so he's the main commentator there. He wasn't able to come. Next to me then that night on the desk was John Morgan. He's MMA media royalty. He's the guy that always asks the first question at every UFC event. He commentates for a bunch of organizations. He's a pro. Dude, sitting next to that guy and seeing how animated he was a lesson I will never forget. Everything that was happening, he was reacting, he was standing up, he was making boisterous movements, and like that's how it comes across on the mic.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there and watching. I'm like, holy crap, man! And I started to imitate him. As the night went on, like we would both stand up and stuff. So I really tried to play into that, which is very cool, and I feel that will help me. The one moment that was like a wow moment, which was a sad one, was, did you ever see when Anderson Silva broke his leg, or when Chris Weidman broke his leg?
Yes.
That happened at one of our shows. The fight starts. I'm reading the sponsor read, and the guy's leg snaps. And it was crazy. Like, the guy is fine now. He's actually competing, like within I swear to God, like a year, the guy's already back to competing in jiu-jitsu and stuff. He's an animal. But it was crazy. The crowd is shocked and silenced, and the fighters are in the cage, and the ambulance comes. Like, it was just insane. It was crazy moment. And if that kind of answers your question, I mean, that was one of the,
No,
everything's always insane. A fight is a fight, so it's always crazy. But boy, oh boy, that was I'll never forget that.
Oh man, I could not even imagine being a commentator or even just being in the arena when something like that happens. I think the closest I came to watching that was in basketball when Sean Livingston of the Clippers basically broke his leg on a fast break, and I remember looking like, oh God, no, that did not. Oh yeah, that did happen. Oh yeah, no, can't look at it like that at all. So Timmy, got a question. Last question here before we let you go here. Again, Timmy B, Fight Insight Podcast. Great podcast. You want to check it out. Look at the background there. It says Fight Insight Podcast. All your combat sports. Best in the business. We're just going to say it now. Best in the business. We're promoting that as the best in the business. As I hit the rock music in the background for us here. We started something new at Sweep Unplugged. Did it recently. We're continuing it on here. And this is our Sweep Unplugged top 5 for Timmy B here. So I'm going to go for my instances here. We're going to go top 5 fighters of all time for you. This is crazy. So for me, I'm going to say, obviously, I'm a Gracie fan. So Gracie is always going to be number 1 for me. I always go back, the Ken Shamrock for me. It's where I started. I'm a huge Anderson Silva fan. Love the Spider. Tito Ortiz, the Huntington Beach bad boy. That was a guy for me. And at number 5, I used to feel sorry for George St. Pierre when he was losing early in his career, that the guy grew on me. So GSP is my 5 for me, but putting the spotlight on you, Timmy B, Fight Inside Podcast. Let's see if the world can guess your 5, as you mentioned them here. Who are your top 5 fighters of all time for you?
Dude, this is a question that we need 17 hours of a podcast to debate. Okay. But I will go in no specific order. Okay.
Yeah, no.
And this is my favorite of all time. That's what we're saying.
Yeah. This is your list. Your
my
favorites.
favorite. Okay. Yeah. My favorite of all time, man. First off, I'm going to go with GSP, George St. Pierre. I'm a Canadian. He's a Canadian. Not only that, he brought class to sports, right? Brought class to MMA. That guy was a great man, a great ambassador for the sport, multi-division champion, one of the greatest of all time. GSP, that's on my list. A guy that made the UFC, that during that Spike TV era, Chuck the Iceman Liddell, That guy with the mohawk, the tattoos, he had the he had a little bit of a dad bod, you know, but that guy was a killer, and that guy really elevated UFC in a time when we needed him most. That guy was the image of UFC. I'm going to go with him. Third, I'm going to go with Ronda Rousey. Look, she brought women's MMA into the fold. There would be no women's MMA really without her catapulting it to where it did. She's cool as crap, man. She's a badass. She's got a, you know, everything about her was very cool. She's got to be up there. Next, I'm going to go with Stamp Fairtex. Your whole audience has no clue who I'm talking about, but she's over there in ONE FC. She is one of the coolest damn fighters ever, man. Go check out Stamp Fairtex. Go watch her clips. She dances to the cage. She's a Muay Thai specialist who's now in MMA. She's currently the atomweight champion of ONE FC. That girl is someone to watch. She's going to be around forever, so check her out. My favorite of all time, Rudy, anybody that watches my podcast knows, it is Bobby King Green of the UFC. Dude, I love that guy. He is one of the most fantastic and exciting fighters. He will kill or be killed every fight. There is never a boring Bobby King Green fight. And I had him on my podcast as a dream guest. I had him a couple years ago. That guy is one of the best of all time. A great man. Man, he speaks so eloquently. He's a great guy. But Bobby King Green, go watch all of his fights, man. Go watch them.
There you go. Timmy B's top 5 here on Sweep Unplugged's top 5. Those are his fighters. Who are your top 5 fighters? Drop them in the comments, and if we read some of them or we get to some of them, you'll get a prize from us here at Sweep Unplugged. So that's amazing, man. You can catch Timmy B Fight Inside podcast. And again, you know, appreciate you joining us here on Sweep Unplugged. There's so much fighting to talk about. I'm pretty sure we can squeeze in another episode at some point or another to talk some more MMA. And I've actually got a really good friend who runs a podcast. I can maybe have him join us too, because he is another massive MMA type of guy. And they, you know, you do a great job with the podcast you've got in Fight Inside. And again, appreciate you joining us here today for Sweep Unplugged. You've got anything to plug right now? The floor is yours.
Dude, everybody, this is obviously your favorite show. You're here listening. I just want to be your second favorite show. Come on over to Fight Insight Podcast, right? I'm on Instagram at Fight Insight Podcast. Find me on YouTube, on millions.co, on Spotify, anywhere you get podcasts, that's where I'll be. So get me there. You can also find an audio only version at rageworkspodcast.com. Go check me out there. Like I said, I'm going to be commentating next weekend. February 1st, fightleagueatlantic.com. Go get your tickets, fightleagueatlantic.com. You can get tickets or get the pay-per-view there. It would be amazing if you could come support. I would love that. And hey, if you're not doing anything tonight, Friday night, come watch me streaming a watch party on millions.co. We're going to see what the hell this GFL draft is about. We can all just laugh about it together. It's not going to be serious at all. It's going to be terrible. Come watch it with me, and we'll see what happens. And if it's amazing, hey, all the better.
Yeah, there you go. Timmy B Fight Inside podcast. And before we go, a quick GSP drop here. He loves comics. I love comics. GSP was in a Captain America movie. So for those of y'all that don't know, go check it out. He's very versatile, as you can tell, as is Timmy B, commentator and also host of Fight Inside podcast. Appreciate you joining us, Timmy. And for all you guys out there, hit YouTube, search Sweep the League TV, hit that subscribe button. You get more content like this, as well as every show that we have on the Sweep the League network. I'm sure you'll be seeing Timmy B again, as well as everybody else we've had on Sweep Unplugged. So for Timmy B, it is Rudy Campos Jr. Until we sweep the league again. We'll see you later, knuckleheads.